Hello, my name is TJ Anderson, and I am a graduate assistant of bands and orchestras here at the Hayes School of Music. Today, I will be interviewing Dr. Jamie Parson, our interim chief diversity officer.
I'm Jamie Parson. I'm serving as interim chief diversity officer. I've been here since 2012, and I serve as an associate professor in the finance, banking, and insurance department as well.
Well, Dr. Parson, I figured we would start with just asking, what do you think, what does it mean to you to be a chief diversity officer, and what does it mean holistically to be a chief diversity officer?
Yeah, I think it's one of those roles that's a bit eclectic today. Being a chief diversity officer, I've heard it described as being a principal architect of DEI strategies for an organization. And I think that's really a good way to explain what this role does. I would say that my responsibilities are primarily around helping us organize as an institution around what DEI initiatives we want to take on, finding the appropriate metrics to measure our success, and identifying barriers for those in our community.
Well, and this is, primarily for what this is, we're looking for sort of awareness, and especially right now in the arts within Black history and the arts of Black America. What do you think that we can do to transfer some of those same ideals into our own school here at the Hayes School, and then, leading out into the university?
Yeah, I think it's touching on some of those difficult histories that I won't say that we always have ignored, but we just maybe weren't aware of. And I think about examples of artists that we know of today that maybe weren't the original artists of a particular piece, and how we haven't given space to acknowledge what happened in that situation where one artist was acknowledged but the other artist wasn't, and really dissecting that history. I think really making space for those conversations. It's really important to our growth as a society to go back and have those conversations.
I mean, you mentioned the idea of, artists not being able to, or not being recognized, but like rock and roll as an art form is directly traced to the Negro spiritual and that whole line is directly traceable. I feel like not a lot of people are aware of that, and that's one of those large umbrellas that people typically don't seem to be aware of. Well, what do you think, could you share a little bit about the background and the beginnings of Black History Month and what that means to you?
Yeah, so, Black History Month really started out of Carter G. Woodson's organization that he started that was studying Negro life and history back in 1915. And it may not seem like a big deal now, but back in 1915, that was a big deal to start up an organization that covered that topic. So in 1926, he, along with the others who started that organization, started Negro History Week. And we sometimes joke a little bit about Black History Month falling in the shortest month of the year.
Right.
But it was actually very strategic that they picked the week that Abe Lincoln's birthday was and Frederick Douglass's birthday was. You remember, this is 1926. This is pre-Civil Rights Movement, so we didn't have all these other folks to celebrate. And so they picked that week. And then actually, I think it was college campuses that started to expand Negro History Week into a full month celebration. So in 1976, President Ford officially recognized Black History Month as a month. And every year, a president picks a theme for I guess, the topic that they're going to cover a lot as maybe federal agencies. And I think this year's topic is Black health and wellness.
Dr. Parson, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on Black History Month as a concept. There are differing views among Black America today, even to the point where Morgan Freeman is on notice saying that he thinks the concept is ridiculous, and whether or not we can agree or disagree with that. He believes that it's ridiculous because he's taking the angle of us relegating our history to 1 month, and the idea that Black history is so let me rephrase, American history is so rooted in Black history, and so he thinks it's a little bit ridiculous to relegate to 1 month. But I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think if we go back to the beginning of when Black History Month started, it was 1920s all the way up through the 1970 era. We transmit information so much more differently today. It used to be that you would have to wait for someone to to go through and tell you who these Black inventors were. Now you can just go through a quick Google site and find out all of that information, right? Black politicians, Black folks in STEM. So that information is so much more readily available. And we're also dealing with a time where we're grappling with complex histories, and just this desire to integrate more of those complex histories into the core of what we're learning. So I think from that perspective, I can definitely see where the argument is, we should be celebrating Black excellence beyond these 28 days in February. I think at the same time, though, I worry about just cutting off Black History Month when we haven't gone through that whole full integration experience. This is a time that we know comes every year where people will stop and celebrate.
And you mentioned something interesting there right at the beginning. You were talking about the idea that information is so readily available for these things. And a lot of times I feel like for the general American population, we get to February and we're celebrating Black history, but we don't really know, A, what to celebrate, and B, where to find that information. Do you know, how can we help sift through all of the work and all of the initiatives that have happened, and how can we sort of focus our celebrations in February?
Yeah, I think it really depends on your discipline of interest. If you are in the STEM field and you want to learn more about Black leaders in that field, there are plenty of trade and professional organizations that do a lot of spotlights. You think about the Black museums that are in Washington, D.C. and across the country. COVID has brought in a lot of virtual components to those that we didn't necessarily have before. So there's tons of information at our fingertips. You're right, it is difficult to figure out where to start, but I think really starting in your discipline of interest is a good way to get connected to something that you're familiar with, and doing a deeper dive in that way.
And I think that's something that right now, especially with this concert series that the Hay School of Music is trying to work on, is, sometimes it can be seen as, okay, well, we're taking the month of February to put programs on with all Black artists, and it sometimes can seem counterproductive to put it all in one month and not. But it's interesting because when you do those things and you put this collection of works together, a lot of times that helps us shine a light on those works and say, okay, here are these works that you may not have been aware of, and you can do them year-round. You don't have to just do them in February, but just in case you're looking for them, here they all are. And I think that's a great initiative that the Hay School of Music is working on, to make sure that those things are right there for you to find all through the month of February. And they do numerous concerts. And
Yeah, it's an excellent opportunity and series. And I think being intentional about when you're going to pause to celebrate a certain aspect of diversity is important, because then people can look forward to that all year, to the next year. So we know that we've done these celebrations and this music series before. We know that we can look forward to it, and we can plan to expand upon it, whether it's integrating or inviting our students who aren't necessarily in music to come to these concerts and giving them opportunities to learn more about the contribution of Black musicians.
how do you view App State's role and contribution towards Black History Month?
Yeah, Black Entertainment TV used to have this phrase called Black Excellence when they had Black Excellence Awards, and I think we need to do more to elevate Black excellence across our campus, whether that's alumni who are now successful leaders in our local community or national community, faculty who are doing research or service in other places across the state or doing research that impacts our Black and brown communities, students who are getting grants with the NSF grants for STEM, who are able to do awesome research that may not be directly linked to diversity, equity, and inclusion, but definitely has an impact on diverse populations by them being able to be recipients of those grants. And then also our local community leaders who are setting up our community to provide successful opportunities for underrepresented and historically marginalized populations in our community. So I think, that's something that we continue to work on, and it's something that we are continuing to develop of, how do you elevate Black excellence without tokenizing? And I think that has been, that's a challenge. Like, right. You want to celebrate people and you want to think intentionally about who you're celebrating, but you do risk that perception of tokenization. And I think, again, that's why months like these are somewhat important, because they help give us the space to do that without so much thinking about, oh my gosh, am I tokenizing someone? No,
Sure.
we're celebrating Black excellence. Let's bring the successful Black folks that we have in our campus community together and highlight their successes, because some of them have been doing some rock star stuff in our society.
Absolutely. So with that and being involved in the community and really understanding, what do you think people can do more to get involved with the awareness of Black history and the understanding as well as the celebration of Black history?
Yeah, I think be present is probably the first and foremost thing that stands out to me. When you see events going on across campus, show up. It's probably one of the most frustrating things to hear from folks. Oh, I wish we did more of these events. I wish we did more events. And then when student organizations and faculty staff host events related to Black History Month, people don't show up. So I think being present is really important. I think also being supportive is also important in a time when morale is low amongst some groups, and people power is low because of the drain and strain of COVID and other issues. So I think being there to support our student groups, reaching out and saying, hey, I didn't see anything on the calendar for this XYZ event or week or month. Are you all planning something? I'd love to help. Whether it's just setting up chairs to provide extra credit for your class to attend so that they can make sure that they are well-attended events. Thinking about ways that you can support actively. And third, I think, is being active in your own self-awareness and learning within your discipline, within what you're interested in, doing that research, getting to know more about people in your field or in your interest areas, because we hear a lot about wanting to create more inclusive classrooms, and sometimes that's difficult because it's not what we've been studying. So taking the time to study and learn more about different histories that are coming to light on different topics, I think is really important as well. I'd be interested from your perspective, what has been the biggest challenge for you as a grad student coming to Appalachian, thinking about, as we celebrate Black history, what are maybe some of the challenges that you see us having?
I think one of the more interesting things that I sort of noticed right off the bat was, and I think maybe it could just be a regional issue, but just the lack there of other Black faces, in the community. I my first duty here at the university was working with the marching band here, and so we started that back in August, and coming out to the first rehearsal and looking across the field and seeing 7 other people, people of color, 7 other Black people in the university marching band, which was, and whether or not I think that has anything to do with the outreach of the program or anything like that, I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think part of that is just regionally, we don't have that many Black people here on campus in relation to everything else that we might have here on campus. And so that was one of the more difficult things, is to realize that, and then to sort of settle into the fact that, like, you have to be really comfortable being the only Black person in the room a lot. And that's not something that we often, that maybe we think about as a comfort enough, because it can err on the side of discomfort at times to notice that and to be aware of that. But on the complete opposite side of that, I have noticed that, like, and I can only speak for the Hayes School of Music and the programs that I work with, but the constant awareness that the ensemble directors have here in the Hayes School of Music, and the awareness of those types of issues, have made me feel incredibly comfortable with working in all of those realms. So, and again, I know this another plug for the Hayes School of Music.
Yeah.
But I do believe that, like, in the theory classrooms and in the history classrooms now, especially now, they're really working to try to raise awareness of, they're not just teaching, like, the dead white male composers anymore.
Right.
Which is such a crucial part of the development of our art and the representation that we should have. Because, again, I mentioned this earlier, but like American history doesn't exist without Black history, and American music and music in general doesn't exist without multicultural music being the new thing that sort of pushes music along. It doesn't exist that way outside of it. It has to happen that way, and so it's such a crucial thing that the teachers here are really working on it. But
Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah. Well, Dr. Parson, thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and to speak with me and to speak with the Hayes School of Music about the initiatives that are happening here on campus and about the importance of this month. And we hope that the audience will get something out of this and will listen and really understand that Black History Month can be celebrated and that all of this can be celebrated year-round as well.
Yeah, it was great meeting you, and thank you so much.
Absolutely.